All right, we're good to go.
Okay, it's Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, and it's a Curriculum and Learning Committee meeting for the school district of Menominee Falls Board of Education. There's a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings, including virtual meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit the SDMF YouTube site. We're at the school district office, conference room 3344/3345 on Pilgrim Road. And it is, the meeting will be called to order 6:01, and it was properly posted.
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll move on to minutes approval. Have a chance to look at the minutes? Okay. Any
All
changes?
motions to approve.
Okay,
I can second that.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, let's say aye. All right, moving on, action items, English Language Arts Curriculum Adoption Recommendation, grades K5 through 5, I say K5, I don't know, I'm
Yes.
through 5th grade, so.
Yes, so we're back to earlier last month, we talked about curriculum for our grades 6 through 12, and now we're here to talk about kindergarten to 5th grade because we have had a team diving into English language arts for elementary, and so they are here. We have a representative group of that larger team to recap what they have accomplished over the last several months and talk about the recommendations. So, you know Michelle Strupp, our elementary literacy coordinator. We have Angie Sardina, our intermediate learning improvement specialist, and Nina Overholzer, our lower elementary learning improvement specialist, and then Heather Barnes, one of our teachers, and Melissa Helene, right? We're
Yep,
working
you
on that,
got it.
as well, so another one of our teachers, so.
Helene, where are you at?
I'm 4th grade teacher at Riverside.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to start everybody.
Yeah, 1st grade at Ben Franklin.
Alright, so I am going to let them get started and I'm sure I will jump in along the way.
So before we begin this evening, I just wanted to take a moment to extend my appreciation and gratitude to my fellow colleagues. So embarking upon a curriculum review process entails many elements and more than like what appears on the surface. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work and it truly takes a village of professionals to rally around this work. So with that being said, I would like to acknowledge the Curriculum and Learning and Analytics Department for their support. I would like to take time to acknowledge the Technology Department. They had to make sure things were up and running with the online platform. Our Curriculum Review Team, our elementary principals, our classroom pilot teachers, so we have 2 of them here today. They did a lot of the heavy lifting with that work. Our literacy coaches, and then our elementary improvement specialists, Angie and Nina. And they were really like my left arm and my right arm through this process, along with Amy's guidance. It was a lot of work, and they were my thinking partners, and we collaborated and worked. So I really want to extend my appreciation to their help through this also. So we look forward to sharing our information with you this evening and continuing the good work that we've started. So our outcomes and our goals for tonight are to take us somewhat down memory lane. So where did we start and where are we now? So on the journey, and then share family and student feedback results that we got at the end of the pilot. Review the teacher evaluation feedback that came midway through and then at the end, because I think we met with you midway through, but we didn't have that feedback yet or that information. So we will be sharing that with you this evening. And then to make our final elementary ELA resource recommendation. So So just to refresh our memories, these were the two resources that we vetted and landed on, Benchmark Advance and then Savvis MyView 2025. So those were the two we were piloting. And this was the big picture timeline when we started our journey in January, but really we started it back in December and even prior to that, like in fall planning. So that was the elements that we kinda embarked upon. What we wanted to highlight, is the other things that weren't captured that we did along the way in that big picture timeline. So we really, it's really important to bring teacher expertise along a curriculum or a resource, right? Like they have to kind of go along with one another. You can't just lean on one. You need both of those to help balance the learning and the teaching that's going to happen.
Especially with the shifts that we're making.
Right. So, and we know a resource is not going to provide everything, but we want it to provide enough that it can give that solid base for everyone, and then we know that we have to bring things in to help support it. So with that being said, we wanted to make sure that we strategically provided some learning opportunities and collaboration opportunities along the way of just like bringing in a resource and piloting it. So in December, we took time to do like a curriculum launch meeting, which I shared with you back then. And that was really an opportunity to give them a sneak peek at those 9 areas of science-aligned instruction. So it was like a crash course, like in those 9 areas, what should this look like and sound like with instruction? So they were prepared when we started looking at the resources that we were coming in, what should be evident? Like what should we see in these resources so that when we vetted them and landed on 2 to pilot, they had a precursor, they were front loaded with that information. Then after we went through that and we landed on the 2, in February, we provided an opportunity for the teachers that were piloting. We took that February PD and then we gave them time to sit together and collaborate and plan. So they were ready to start with instruction, not just saying, okay, here's the pilot, go, have fun, right? Like we tried to help provide that structure that they could plan together. We did some pilot check-in meetings along the way where we gave them more information and then we provided them time where they could do a cross analysis between the 2 because they only had time to really pilot 1. So Mel and Heather were just piloting MyView. They didn't have an opportunity to pilot Benchmark, but we wanted them to give them some insight. So one of the meetings was this cross-comparative analysis that then the Benchmark and the MyView pilot teachers were sharing out what each resource provided. So it gave them a little understanding of the other resource, not that they didn't have, they were going in it cold. We had weekly grade level meetings with coaches, so I think I shared that with you in the past, that the coaches, the literacy coaches and the learning improvement specialists were assigned a grade level, and then they met with those grade level teachers virtually on a weekly basis to talk about how things were going and support them with the teaching that was happening. I met weekly with the coaches then, so I checked in with the coaches to see how are things going with those planning meetings, is there anything we need to know or move forward on or help or navigate, is there anything we need to go back to MyView reps or Benchmark reps and ask them about, because there needs some clarification points. And then we did classroom visits, and the purpose of the classroom visits was to see it in action. Right? Like it's one thing to look at it and see that it has these, but then how is it in action, seeing the students engaged in the learning, what are they doing? And we didn't go in there expecting perfection because the teachers were still learning it, right? It was more just to get a pulse, like what is going on and how does this look and sound?
How often were you able to make the classroom visits?
How many did we do?
I think we had a total of over 80.
We had a lot.
We had a lot, but we were strategic about making sure we weren't just visiting one room during one time, because then you're only gonna see reading.
Yes.
So we wanted to get it, so we really were strategic about spreadsheeting it out so we could shade boxes to make sure we were getting all of those components in a variety of classrooms at all of those levels, and so we had over 80, which is, I was happy with that, that was
And I don't think that included mine too, so I don't think I always included mine.
Yeah, so that's a
Approximately.
Yeah, so it's just little like dipsticks, right, that we're just kind of getting a feel of it. So those were things that we did that weren't captured in that big picture timeline. So these following items that are placed on here in regards to staff and family priorities, when we sent out surveys before we even started and had resources at the table, we were vetting resources, we sent out surveys to the entire K-5 staff and families. And we had them give us feedback on it for a resource and for learning around literacy. What would be elements or components that you would wanna have in a resource or you would prioritize as high priority areas. So with that, I think we shared this too way back when, but we're just bringing it back because it is our journey that then with that feedback, we use those areas and brought them into our evaluation criteria tool that teachers used when they were evaluating their resource. And then we brought in other criteria areas too, but this really kind of launched us because we said if all staff are saying this and families are giving us feedback on this, we wanna make sure then we are looking for those components in the resource along with other elements then too.
So last time we were here, I don't know if I think it might have been literally that day, we did that mid check-in and you were anxious and we're like, I don't know if we wanna share this. Literally, it's hot off the press, but, so we had, as Michelle mentioned, those areas that we're saying, if these are our values, this is what we need to be measuring the resource against, so we don't get swayed by other things. These are our values we wanna stick with. So we had a lot of survey results that they gave at that midpoint. This was kind of the one that we wanted to capture today. So at that point, they were looking at their resource against those criteria and then saying, strong consideration, do you give this resource, should we be giving this strong consideration? And at that point, that midway, my view, we had 75% of those teachers saying, yes, we should be giving this some strong consideration. Benchmark, we had 50. Those other little elements that I mentioned, we didn't just not care about those we really use, as Michelle mentioned, to drive those grade level meetings we had with teachers to say, here are some things we're noticing in some of that other data, let's dig into that a little bit with those in those meetings, let's talk about assessments, let's make sure this week when everybody talks with their people, let's check in on this or that. So we did use that other data, but this was kind of the one that we just wanted to share with you, that we, I don't know, kind of the most important one at that
Kind
point.
of the summary,
Yeah.
summary sheet.
Cause you kinda asked and we're like, well, we don't.
Yeah.
So there you go, there's your answer, a couple months later.
You were in the middle of a thorough trial.
So then at the end, so now we're kind of jumping to the end, all that stuff was happening in between there, it's not like there wasn't anything happening, but then we get to the end, now here we are. So we did ask for some family feedback, we got 52 responses from families whose children were experiencing the benchmark curriculum. We asked them two questions, one is, what are your students talking about at home in regards to this resource? And the second is we said, have you noticed any changes in your child's like performance or their, just any changes that you're noticing in their work. And then there was a third, just kind of an open-ended, what else do you want us to know? We did include, we gave them items to select from rather than just open, because that can be really hard for parents, without the same experience. So we kind of had choice things for them to click on, these are things I'm noticing, or to guide their conversation with their student as well. So that's what we see in that top portion there, what students shared at home. Those were the items those were the top 4 that really popped out before we kind of saw it drop. So those were 4 themes that we saw from families that were experiencing the benchmark curriculum. Then as far as changes noticed, those were the 3 things that you see on there that they were noticing about changes in their students' performance. We did have open comments from each of those too in each of those areas. We also gave opportunity for comments, and we'll share a little bit about what we noticed with that in a minute. Slide that's coming up. But if we could go to the My View one, you will notice that we had 49, so really a similar number of responses and a decent number of responses sharing their thoughts about My View. Those top 4 things were exactly the same. So I think that shows that we probably did land on 2 resources that really did capture some of that we are noticing the things that we were kind of hoping to see some changes in. And then as far as that bottom part where we're saying changes noticed, the only thing that was different from the benchmark one was parents noticed vocabulary, that their students were talking about these interesting new and exciting words, talking about those at home, which was great to hear too.
And just to note, like changes noticed, it was a 6-week period.
Yeah.
You know, so really that's hard to like, in a 6-week period, like to show like academic growth or what, you know what I mean? But it could have been like its vocabulary was something that was explicitly taught in both curriculums. So that probably was something new that was coming home that children were talking about because it was something more like
New and
lifted
exciting.
compared to our like former curriculum that we have right now.
When you chose units, was it like just depending on how it fell in the grade, like with what you were working with, or which unit, you know, like for example, through Savas, like was it mid-unit, mid-year?
They guided
unit?
us, they kind of gave us, with
Okay.
Savas, the caveat with that is they wanted us to experience the 2025 version, so the
Right, that's
units
right.
that they gave us were in that 2025 version, so that we could, because that is going to be what we would get in fall.
Okay,
And then with benchmark, they guided us,
Mm-hmm.
they said, they looked at where we were in the year, and they said, these would be the units that you would want to
okay,
kind of
so they kind of
use.
guided you.
Yes.
Because there would, like, you don't want to pilot unit one
One.
in
No,
first grade where they have some
Yeah.
out and then
because you're kind of mid-year.
you're past that, so
Yeah,
a lot of your
yeah.
learning, so
Yeah.
it's tricky, but
Yeah.
yeah, they were helpful.
That's good.
Okay, so then we can go to the next one. Oh, Amy, so this area, this was really what we captured from some of those comments. Parents were super thoughtful. We mentioned how thoughtful teachers were in their comments. Parents were very thorough and thoughtful in some of the comments that they made, and you know, it helped. We were kind of talking about there's going to be shifts for our educators and there's going to be shifts for our students, and this helped us to recognize like we're going to have to shift how we inform our parents about those different changes because it's going to look and feel different for all parties involved. So it was really helpful for us thinking, ooh, how are we going to next year then lay some foundation for parents to support their kids in a way that's connected to the ways that we'll be instructing. So it was really helpful that they gave some of the specific feedback. So these were 4 kind of, again, themes that we saw kind of rising from some of those comments. So first off, the instructional framework. There's going to be a shift to some, like a greater period of time spent in large group and really explicit instruction. So that's going to be a little bit different. So that made sense that was something that parents were wondering about. We also have, and then there will still be that time for guided independent practice and all that, but there just is going to be more explicit large group instruction happening. The productive struggle, so parents, you know, are commenting like, this was hard, my kid said it was hard, and so we're talking about really, which there's nothing wrong with that, they were thoughtful in that comment too, like we know that this is something that's more challenging for our students, so it made sense that it was harder and they liked that, but it was something to note. But grappling with stuff is what leads to your brain growing. That's where learning happens. So we want to move past like kind of relying on any sort of giving of answers and kind of leading things to kind of guiding kids towards answers and discoveries. So we're going to be building kids' stamina a little bit. But again, if we're starting this at the beginning of the year, unit 1, that's going to be helpful too. You know, it's hard to jump in the middle of the year and kind of turn things around. So nice opportunity there. As far as text complexity and variety of text, our past practice didn't really immerse all students in grade level text. We really were kind of had kids reading different things at different levels, and so this is going to be a really nice door of opportunity to expose all kids to grade level text. The resource provides scaffolding to make it accessible for all kids, but we want them to all be engaged in grade level text. So there's we're not limiting, there'll still be a variety of options, we're not limiting that, but there will be, we want to see kids engaged in the grade level text, like that needs to happen, so this will be a great opportunity for that. And then last is just kind of thinking about how we redefine independent reading. You know, there's a structure to free choice. That doesn't mean that it's just our free choice all the time. We're shifting that structure a little bit. That will be narrowing some of those selection options and understanding ways to engage kids in meaningful reading practice within certain texts that they're really studying during that unit. So we're not saying that they never have a chance to read their favorite things. There will be those opportunities, but kind of the bulk of the time will be in some like teacher selected to support the learning that is happening within the resource rather than just whatever you want.
I think that's been a really important shift is that independent reading does not mean free choice reading.
Just all the time.
I think that's it, we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, so we heard from families, and then another important stakeholder is hearing from our students. And even though they're kindergarten, their voice is still important, and so we wanted to ensure that, that we got the feedback and data from all grades. So in grades 2 through 5, it was through a Google form. First grade had a choice if they wanted their students to use it electronically or paper pencil. And then in kindergarten, same exact questions that the teacher read, and then the students circled if they thought it was, they agreed, they kinda, or no. So this is the 459 students were engaged in this. They were, and pretty equal, 234 MyView and 225 Benchmark Advance. Overall, students were noticing that they were learning new skills in writing, they were learning new skills in reading, they were learning new vocabulary words. And noticing that the materials they were using were supporting this learning. So students were recognizing that throughout the process. A little discrepancy, I guess, or a little difference in the scoring. Students engaged using the MyView resource were just slightly more interested in the topics they were learning, and then also just a bit more looking forward to that learning time. And then overall, would you recommend this resource, would you not? Again, MyView fell up just a bit above. Ms. Barnes actually had a funny story. She gave her students the thumbs up, thumbs down sheet. She went through the whole thing and she noticed one. I should let you tell the story.
Well, he had circled thumbs down and he was very engaged the entire time.
All the other stuff was thumbs
Yeah.
up, but the
So
last.
I just had a chat with him like, oh, why would you not do? He's like, I'm not gonna be in charge of the whole Menominee Mall. All these new books. He's like, that's way too much. Super.
Because I thought that
Yeah.
last question was a genius way to get at that information, because these two were meeting about it, and I wasn't there, and they sent me the survey, and they said, what do you think? I'm like, oh my gosh, that last question is a great way to ask kids, like, if you were in charge, would you want kids to use this? And you would have
He's like,
to-
no.
Yeah, but it's all 90s. Learning still. But I would be curious to see it next year, like if they're really,
So
And that
we,
will be a part of the process,
yeah.
But yeah,
we
it
asked
was
them
just.
about it, but we also recognize they are 6.
Like begrudgingly recommending
I
it.
love that they took it seriously.
So that was the student feedback, and then we have Mel and Heather here to share some of the experiences that they had in teaching and in engaging with their students every day.
Yes, so it does include the foundational skills, reading and writing. They're all integrated throughout the unit. It's very cohesive. Everything fits together, everything ties together really nicely. My students were even making connections between the different areas. Their spelling words were found in their decodable readers, or the academic vocabulary words were in the mentor text, and they were making these connections on their own. That was really awesome to see. The level of engagement was super high with the unit and the weekly questions. I had informational text. It was I Spy was the name of my unit. They were so excited about each weekly question. So there's 6 weeks in each unit, and there's one unit question, and then the weekly questions go like a little deeper into the bigger question to narrow down the focus. For example, my unit question was, how do living things grow and change? And then week 1 was, how do animals grow and change? So it just made it a little bit narrower and more deeper dive into essential question. So that was super engaging. They loved it. Every week they came in, they wanted to know what the new question was. So that was super engaging. The engaging texts that support the theme, there was a variety. There was fiction and nonfiction. There was poetry. They had drama in there. There was decodable readers. There was trade books. There was foldable decodable readers, which the students could take home and mark up and do highlighting within the classroom. There was a big book collection, and then there also was the knowledge library, which was available online on the online platform that the students enjoyed digging into. The student interactive book, my students loved. It was very powerful resource, highly engaging, and it really served for them as a learning platform. and included all different things. It wasn't just like a typical workbook that you think about. It had the anchor charts, it had the mentor text, it had decodable stories, it had the weekly literature selections, and it allowed for guided practice and also independent practice, whether it be the launching skill they were working on or, you know, writing their high frequency words. So they were really, really engaged in that. Like, for example, they just loved highlighting in the mentor text, you know, when they were doing the close read looking for specific skills or a vocabulary word where they haven't had that experience before. So they were super excited about that. And then at the end of the unit, which is week 6, it culminates in an aligned project-based inquiry. So my project, my students were able to research an animal, and then they got to write a letter to a zookeeper, persuading them to add this animal to the zoo. And again, very engaged. It was awesome to see them tie everything together. So they were able to apply like what they learned reading the informational text, you know, looking at the text graphics, the text features, to gather the information about their animal, and then apply what they learned into the writing. So using their grammar, the conventions, you know, capital letters, periods, sentence structures, and then they also use like their vocabulary words that they had used throughout the unit.
And my week 6 project, because ours was also 6 weeks, it kind of mirrors the same pattern as Heather's. But my week 6 project was it was like a research project where they could design a poster about adaptations. And so our unit was, the essential question of our unit was, how do living things adapt to the world around them? And everything in the unit had nonfiction and fiction stories and poetry stories about adaptations, really, with the big umbrella. And so then when they got to the unit 6 project, they were really doing like a project-based inquiry on an animal and their adaptations, and they could kind of select one, and it was really, really engaging. The kids loved it. They just loved doing that hands-on stuff, so that was really awesome. But I did also want to highlight a few other things. Heather did a nice job with kind of like the overview, and I'm gonna go into like some of the online things that I noticed. One thing that I really liked, and I feel like we've been kind of begging for resources for reading, and so this was really exciting because they have all these things online that you can push out to students. So they had digital practice. So for instance, during one of our word studies, we were studying diphthongs, and so you could assign a practice game that gave students practice with those. And so then you can also get data retrieved from playing that game, which was nice. There's also other assignments you can push out online, and you can see and look at it online too. They also have books. There was a book club book that we could assign called Animal Camouflage, and it had like connected stories about adaptations of different animals to really give students experience with different text and more information about animals with adaptations, which I really appreciated because I feel like we have to sometimes search for so much. Another thing that they have online is digital practice sheets, like we were doing language and conventions. There was some digital stuff that you could hand out and push out through the online platform. And they could practice right on there with typing, and some of our students really do much better with some digital typing. Some of our students do better with handwritten things, so you really could differentiate and give some the handwritten in front of them if you wanted, and some the digital practice if you wanted. And all of that goes through our online platform of Clever, which was really easy for the kids to navigate. I was kind of nervous at first, but it worked like a charm. Another thing you could do was push out videos to the students. Like one of the comprehension strategies that we had in our unit was analyzing the plot and setting to a story called The Men of the Mississippi. And they could watch this comprehension strategy video, which would give them a little background knowledge. So sometimes students enjoy that because it's, you know, technology-based, video-based, and it might not be my talking head talking to them. What else? I did want to touch on Okay, so the online platform, another really cool feature about the online platform is you can monitor student progress with the assessments that way. We noticed as the students took the end of the unit assessment, it was very similar to what it looks like when they're taking the forward exam. So it would be really fantastic practice for that in selecting, comprehension things and vocabulary and word study things that they learned through the unit, and then you can see how they did. But after the data is collected online, then it's just this wonderful retrieval where you can kind of pare down and look for patterns in the data, and like if you want to look at certain question items, you can do that very quickly. It's just like with clicks of button, and we don't have that right now, so it's way better. What else?
And Benchmark didn't have, well, you didn't know, but Benchmark doesn't have that.
Benchmark Advanced does have that, they both did.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
How, okay, since, pause, but
Yeah.
how much online digital time percentage-wise would you guesstimate that they?
Not
Each
much,
student would have.
it would only be like if I had some students doing maybe some independent practice and I wanted to assign it to them, they might do 10 minutes, for the day on that kind of thing, so. A lot of the rest was whole group teaching, modeling, and then they do some practice with the student interactive book.
And I would say the same thing, like 10-15 minutes. I use it more as when I was doing my small group.
Yeah.
From the exit tickets, what kiddos needed some reteaching, so I would give them an online assignment while it was between some.
Yeah, it's still good to have like a mix of
Yes.
mediums and, yeah.
Absolutely. Another thing about the online platform is that students who struggle with the grade level text can have it read to them, which is a nice feature too. And then also with some other differentiation, like Heather said, we had exit tickets every day. There was an exit ticket on some sort of skill. So for example, if I wanted to, after I taught the week's vocabulary words, if I wanted to check in on that and get a temperature reading on if they are really getting some of those vocabulary words, I would give them the exit ticket, and if they were struggling with that, then I could look at my teacher's edition and it tells you what page to flip to if they're not getting those words, and then turn to that page and it gives you a whole lesson that you can do with a small group to help develop the vocabulary that they may have missed. And so that really helps. And then there's other small group teaching guides. There's something called the Reading Routines Companion. So if there's certain skills that I think, a student needs or a group of students need, there's just so much in here. We don't have that for intervention right now. So that's really key, is to have some more resources for us.
It's all right there.
It's just all right there.
Aligned resources.
Yes.
Aligned
Yeah.
resources, there you go.
Yeah.
Another really interesting thing was to look over the writing materials. And so it's very thorough. I mean, they're in this resource, they're teaching word study and spelling, they're teaching grammar and conventions, and they're also teaching the process of writing. And so the process of writing was really sound, in my opinion. I mean, they started with pre-writing and brainstorming, and all of the resources in the student interactive are tied with it. So, if we're brainstorming something and we're looking at some model mentor texts, our writing assignment was to write a travel article. And so the students looked at the very beginning of writing at these mentor texts that they gave us plenty of, so that students could see what it is that eventually their piece of writing should look like when they're getting towards the end of the process. So that's really helpful, and I think it's best practice is to have like, okay, this is what I want yours to look like, towards the end of our writing process. So the pre-writing, and then the brainstorming, and then making sure that they are getting some grammar skills in there, and looking at places they can insert transitions and things like that. And then developing detail, and then going to the editing process. It's all there. And so I think it's just fantastic. it seems like every unit then will have them focus on different grammar and conventions so that they can look for it in their writing. And so that's really, really awesome. And so at the end of the unit, they published a travel article, and it was about a place that they've been to, and it kind of integrated all these skills that we were teaching through the unit, so.
How did it go, how did it work with special ed? Was it appropriate material, like on level, like not too difficult? Were there any struggles with special ed students?
There is going to be struggles, but we're really used to differentiating for that. And our special ed teachers are very used to
Did it
differentiating.
give you enough
So what,
guidance?
yeah, I mean, there's enough intervention in here that we could give different lessons to the kids that need more. If I have a student that's not doing well with Greek and Latin roots, I've got a whole mini lesson plus 3 more practice days that I could do, or the special education could do.
Yeah.
Um,
So in addition to the reading routines book that Mel was speaking of, this resource is another component to this. But this is actually my focus intervention.
Oh, gotcha.
But again, aligned directly with the skills you're working on,
So it's not a whole separate,
correct.
Right.
Grade level.
in each lesson they have these too.
Yeah, it's multilingual for learners, and it gives you light
Yeah, I
support,
saw that,
medium
yeah.
support, substantial support, just right here for those.
Were you able to utilize that?
Yes, because it goes to EL students, so yeah, it worked out really well.
How about the intervention? Were you
Yes,
able to
yeah.
utilize that, and how effective was that for those students?
It was great, I mean, they have visuals that I can put in front of them. They have, I think it's a fabulous curriculum because really, if I had a substitute teacher too, like I can bookmark the places and they can pull up the lesson and really have an easy time reading it and teaching the skills, so.
It's very explicit, makes it
It is very
right there.
explicit, yeah.
And special ed teachers as well as an EL rep were a part of the larger team too, so they were also, they knew what the criteria was, they were teachers who were working inside pilot classrooms, and so they were a part of this process as well. And were able to share their noticings and their insights to bring that kind of more full, complete picture. And I think I was able to observe a couple times in a 4th grade class, not in Mel's, but over at Valley View. But the travel article was just so neat because the kids were receiving really explicit instruction, but then to apply the knowledge that they had gained, they had their own voice and choice. So some kids were writing about, the town that they go to up north, but creating a travel article for that town, like the favorite candy store that was there and where the best fishing is. So they were creating a travel article, but for what they knew, where some of the kids in the class, it was like Paris. And I'm like, did you ever go to Paris? Well, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it was Mall of America, as you went around the room, I could have learned so much about so many different areas, not of just our country, but of, the world, as the kids were working on theirs, and then as they were working with a partner and sharing out their table group and presenting to their larger class. Like, it was just allowed for a lot of that, which is really where you get a lot of the engagement. But then also the application of all the skills that they're learning. So I thought the travel article was pretty cool in the classes I was in. So we heard from families, we heard from students, now we heard from our fabulous pilot teachers. And so ultimately, the teachers within their pilot resource gave their final rating. So this was the 12 classroom teachers who were piloting MyView against the established criteria. So at the very conclusion, they said, I went through all of this, I worked with my kids, I got their feedback, insight, criteria, 83% said, I would say we should strongly consider this, and 50% in Benchmark Advanced said, I would give strong consideration to this resource. So that was when they were giving their final evaluation based on the criteria. Then everyone got pulled together, so all of the, you can keep going. All of the teachers came together. And one of the pieces of evidence that we brought to then that larger meeting was this here, where we compiled all of the data from MyView and Benchmark. But what this was showing was we paused after we were way deep into all the teaching and learning, and we zoomed back out and said, where did we start? What was the priorities of the community? What was the priorities of all of the teachers before we got excited about the book and before we saw the online resource and before we saw the kids writing their travel article? Like where did we begin before we kind of got distracted by maybe bells and whistles and new books? And so we took it back to that. We zoomed all the way back out to where we started. And so that's where these different components came from. And then we dug into the evaluation to pull out the evaluation and the data in each of those areas. So this was a nice way to bring ourselves and also the entire pilot team kind of zoom back out to where we had started. So you can just kind of see the different areas and the side-by-side data as it laid out. So this was one of,
I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're still, Amy mentioned keeping Haggerty though? Or-
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the phonological,
Yeah.
phonemic awareness.
That did come out
Yeah.
from teachers using both Benchmark Advance and MyView, that they felt this was a strong resource. We've really seen a lot of gains in our student knowledge that then they can apply to their reading and writing, and that it's going really well on the student learning end, on the teaching end. I know they just kind of did some observations and things, and so it was recommended from both resources to continue with that.
And we talked to two districts, one who's currently using MyView and one that's currently using Benchmark, and both of them are using Haggerty as well.
It's only like
So
10 minutes,
Mhm.
Yeah.
a lesson, right?
Yeah.
so we fully expect to, of course, that's still in a pilot process, but we fully
Yeah.
expect that it will
I like
continue.
Haggerty.
Yeah.
And the students it was nice to see them transfer the skills into the MyView pilot,
Yeah,
the hand motions,
exactly.
the sounding out, the whatever it was. It
Mhm.
was awesome to see that carry over.
So we had the evidence from the teachers within their pilot and that feedback. We had this piece of evidence that we brought to the table when we had all the teachers come. And then ultimately at, so the next slide, much discussion and sharing and collaboration. Ultimately, everyone as a part of the pilot pulled all the data and all the information together, everything they heard over the course of the meeting, and made a final recommendation. So out of all teachers, they made that recommendation, and as a result of that final meeting, MyView was more strongly recommended by the full team, but there were some questions that got raised in that meeting. There were some things that came to surface, and so we really did want to ensure that our questions were answered. We wanted to make sure we took that deeper dive and that we really investigated, because it's critical that this is a good resource for all of our kids. At every grade, within reading, within foundational skills, within writing, within grammar. So across the board, it needs to meet all of our needs. And so we just wanted to put a pause to dig deeper and to answer questions and to talk to other districts utilizing this, to go back to our vendors and our trainers and get more information. And so Michelle's gonna talk a bit about that deeper dive.
We came up for a little air and then we went back down.
Hold your breath.
Yeah, there we go. So the questions that came up were more in regards to around in kindergarten. And so we wanted to take time to just like Nina said, do a deeper dive in those areas. So we really took time to look at the reading foundation skills area, and we went to the standards. And we started there, because I think sometimes we think about past practice or what we used to do or what our curriculum used to offer. So we went back there and we really kind of vetted those and had some good conversation among us around the table of what does this mean, like kind of unpacking it in a sense. And then from there, we started centering ourselves around the questions that they brought up. And they brought some questions up around in regards to the scope and sequence with phonological awareness and the pacing of phonics. And so we dug into that, and then once we had ourselves centered around the standards, we're like, it's meeting that, like the pacing might be a little bit different, but it's really meeting those needs, like instead of going broad, let's stay like and go deep and really make sure that we're providing this really solid foundation for them so that then first grade can stand on kindergarten and second grade can, we're standing on each other's shoulders and building what they need to learn. So we felt good about that when we did that day in regards to that, and we knew that we wanted to continue with Heggerty for the phonological awareness. So they would still do phonological awareness in my view as kind of the warm-up, and we'll still have that Heggerty time as a separate entity, and that will just really ensure that we have some good quality instruction in that.
What about the word recognition skills? I'm going back to that other slide, it's 58% for my view. Did they just not get there enough with that, with the unit or compared to a benchmark, 91%?
So the word recognition skills, those are structures that support word recognition skills.
Yeah.
So that would be like shared reading, interactive writing, dictation, dictated sentences.
Okay.
And so there are opportunities in there. I think what we uncovered is it doesn't specifically call it like shared reading or interactive writing. It doesn't note it, so we have to build understanding. There is some building we have to do around what is interactive writing. That's a high leverage instructional routine that we have to get some clarification around.
Okay.
So those areas, there are some of those areas in there, and then there are some of those areas that there's opportunities to put them in there. Again, a resource isn't gonna have everything, but you have to make sure that it has most of it, and then what can you bring in easily to provide those opportunities.
And when we really dug deeper into that data, it was coming from the kindergarten pilot teachers. And so when we did really do that deep dive, there were a few things that we uncovered that just in that one single unit in that 6 weeks, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that was over there. Or it's really spelled out in the reading routine companion book, but I had used this. So some of that is just all along the learning curve but we asked them to really be critical.
We did.
We did not want anyone piloting who was gonna say, yep, this is great. We wanted people who are going to say, wait, what about this, and where is this, and how do you do this, and because that's how we all can learn and grow. If you just say, this is great, we don't get much from that feedback.
We did ask them to be critical
Yep.
consumers and go with it in a critical lens and with an inquiry stance and ask questions. So we appreciate them bringing those to our attention and addressing that, because it did help us do that deep dive, and that's what we asked them.
I think we also kind of discovered around some of the questions you were asking, Chris,
Yeah.
they did this unit, but in unit 4, they started to do this thing
might
that,
be-
so it wasn't yet.
Yeah, it didn't
Or
capture it, yeah.
we didn't do
Right,
unit,
that's
we
what I
didn't do unit 1 where you really lay some foundational things, because we jumped into unit 3. So it's part
Right.
of, that was another element, so there were a lot of elements that,
And the elements are there, but it's kind of semantics game,
Well,
you
there
know,
is
to-
so much
There's a lot.
in this curriculum, and I was very happy to hear that you had found the ways to utilize all of it and pilot all of it online, in the classroom.
We tried our best.
It's there's no change, that's coming. Right,
That's what you can do.
I mean,
Practice,
it just is time to learn how to use everything that it has to offer.
and
But-
Michelle did lay a good foundation of kind of saying we're not striving for perfection here in these 6, we just want you to dabble and try and dive in and then ask questions. So we didn't want anyone to feel like this because and then that's what next year's all about, is really refining and making sure we're honing in on everything that we should, because there's so much,
There is
right?
so much, yeah.
And even with that, we'll have to scaffold how to implement, right? We have to have what do we go after first, because it is comprehensive.
Go back to your list of.
Yes,
Yes, what are
Yeah.
the key
Yeah.
things that we start with,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
But-
there's that wide menu of options, so depending on your student needs, if they need more in the vocabulary or more in the grammar, there's those options there. But you may find, we're doing pretty well with this, but we need to do some more work with our writing. And there's opportunities there. So there's so much there, but you're not going to use all of it all the time. But it's available as like kind of a menu to select from based on what's needed.
Well, and depending on the classroom too, like each year, like you find different skill deficits with your students,
Grade
so
levels.
you might have different things you're going to.
Yeah, so overall, those were the areas we looked into and we did a deep dive, and we felt after we did that deep dive and explored things, we saw that there were opportunities that were provided that we just didn't see in the reading companion book, right, because it's 6 weeks. And then there would be opportunities that we can embed and we can bring stuff in maybe earlier than unit 3, right? That we could bring that in, or unit 4 or unit 5. We can, so I think with that being said, we felt confident that we addressed those, and then we followed up with the 5K teachers and met with them and kind of laid some things out and had that conversation.
Everybody left feeling comfortable at that point. So, this team did a this deep dive was not on the plate, or not on the calendar, and they really dug in. I had a chance to sit in on some of those sessions, and really a lot of good work happened there, as it did all the way through. But this was, just kind of an extra piece that I think was very well done.
So
that brings us.
So ta-da, I feel like we need a drum roll or something, like party favors. So with that, we are coming to you this evening with our recommendation to use My View for our elementary literacy resource.
5K through 5th grade. We are in good company with this recommendation. I think I shared with our chair last week that we know that this resource is used in Elmbrook currently. Kettle Moraine has just selected it, Muskego has just selected it, Fort Washington also uses it, so a number of our neighboring districts are in various stages of using this as well.
And you had that one slide too, there's a strong, it's all linked to the standards, it's very,
Yeah, so that is one
connected.
of the really I won't say powerful, but it's one of the great elements of it, because when you look at a lot of the curriculums, they are correlated to the Common Core standards, so when you look at it. But My View has specifically the Wisconsin ELA standards, so you can go back and it has that crosswalk between it, and you can see the correlation to our standards, so that is really nice. Yeah, so this is just various areas that we pulled, saying what would be the impact on the learning and the connection to the standards. So it is very aligned to our standards. The engagement in that grade level complex text that we spoke to already, right?
Yeah.
That we're getting them in that grade level complex text, but we're providing scaffolding through like read out loud and then coming back to close reads, and they have that, so it's not just like saying, Amy, read this, like there is scaffolds to have them immerse in that. And then the variety of the text that we're giving them are text types. So just because it was a nonfiction unit, they still had poetry that maybe centered around like geography, that theme, or they had drama, and they had nonfiction and fiction, instead of just saying, oh, geography, nonfiction topic, we're only going to read nonfiction. So that's nice that they can still see that and they can get exposure to that theme in various text types. Explicit instruction is there in those 9 areas, so we want to ensure that due to Act 20, right, those 9 areas, and that is there. The knowledge building goes across, so through 5K through 5th grade, all the units align. So like unit 1 throughout all those grades are geography, and then what they study in those areas kind of builds. Unit 2 is life science, so again, everyone in unit 2 is doing life science, but then what they're specifically studying builds. Unit 3 is arts and literature, so then that would kind of vary. Unit 4 is history, and Unit 5 is earth science. So that knowledge building that we talked about, that's so important to build knowledge of our students, to help with comprehension, is evident, and we can see how then grade levels are standing on each other's shoulders, building those areas of knowledge.
And it's kind of neat to think like the whole school, or like your third, fourth, and fifth are all in this unit, they'll be doing lots of different things, but I think that's neat for support too, like teachers that are pushing in to support students all have that same theme kind of resonating through all of our classrooms, which is kind of a really neat concept, I think.
Let's see, foundational skills, yep, the assessment suite is very, I mean, like again, we're gonna have to scaffold that because they offer various means of assessments, formative and summative. So we'll have to figure out what to start with and then start exploring and building our repertoire with the other assessments provided.
Could be assessing every day.
And we don't wanna do
No.
that, we wanna teach.
Right,
Assessment
right.
is
There's
teaching,
just a
yeah.
lot of resources that I think we haven't had,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be helpful.
And then we already talked about the multiple access points for differentiation. I think Mel spoke to that very nicely and providing all those different options that we have with the small groups and the intervention stuff that's given for reteaching.
Any questions? Comments?
When was the last curriculum adoption for K-5 through 5th? Or,
There have been some refreshes of materials, but I want to say it was obviously well before your time, so it was
I was gonna say about
probably 2011 or
I'm pretty sure it's about 10 years.
at
We
least.
need something.
Well, and I think with the adoption of Act 20, this is the perfect time because now we know what we need and it, would have kind of been unfortunate to get new materials even 2 or 3 years ago and now have to
Correct.
reassess
Time.
what the needs are. I just wanna thank everyone for their hard work on this. I had a bunch of questions coming in and as you presented, so many of them were answered. So thank you for all of the time. I know that there's just so much going on and then behind the scenes collaborating with 2 pilots at the same time. And we were in a time crunch too of like, we have to gather all this information and make sure that you're making a good choice for, the next,
16 years.
Yeah, 16 years. I don't wanna say time again, but just to really look at everything, because when I had kind of paged through, there is so much information there, and one of the questions I had was, is there any way to use it all? And it just sounds like as needed. But the options are there, the opportunities are there for that, and
That's where I think also that this hard work, it feels like a hurdle to kind of come to like a decision and then, thinking forward though, like now we have 70 teachers across 4 buildings to onboard and like it's gonna be a really big, so it's gonna be a real, oh yeah. So that's just like a really huge task to think about and that's going to be like if we want this to go well, which we all do, like regardless of the resource, this just is knowing that how we do that, we wanna set everyone up for success so that, the really thinking about how we're going to lay this out to ensure teachers feel successful and supported. That's going to be really important and that's a large number of teachers in 4 different buildings to, it's gonna be a big undertaking and I think we're ready for it, we're excited about it, and teachers are excited too, but just about the time you think you jump over one hurdle, like, oh, there's a few more.
I think that's a really good point. Is one of the things that anytime you're considering new curriculum, you don't know how teachers are gonna respond. And I have heard so much excitement from our elementary teachers, both before the pilots and then as they were going on and now just very excited about this opportunity and new curriculum and just how students are responding and the best practices that are embedded in this curriculum. It's been really exciting to hear their kind of the energy around this, even though we know it is going to be a huge undertaking and that place of not feeling, because you're trying something new, not feeling perfect at it, or, just that, how uncomfortable that is, but, the opportunities to support them and then, to just continue their professional learning, I think is really exciting.
Go ahead.
I have a question with the teachers. Remember, you were talking about dabbling in all parts of that unit. Were you able to actually touch upon every aspect, like all the online, just a,
I mean, I would say
Yeah.
I tried to get to as many as I could, just so I could share feedback and stuff. Yeah,
or most of that, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that there were so many resources to go through, and so I feel like the first and second week, we were just really trying to focus on the weekly question and the vocabulary and, rolling it out so that it's like more of a whole group way. But then, the following weeks, it was maybe, pulling some resources for small group as well, like in addition to what we were doing with the whole group. And so, yeah, I think we're gonna have to take a scaffolded approach like that with our teachers next year, because it's a bear, but it's a good thing to have a lot of resources. Yeah. It's a nice bear. It's a nice bear, it's a fuzzy bear.
It was really neat that even in Ms. Barnes' class being first grade, how much of the online she was able to allow her students to explore and push out, because that's a big shift, and there's varying levels of comfortability with technology, and you're a little unsure, like if I push, send it to my kids, what did they get, how did they navigate it, how do I get it back? And she was like, well, that's why I'm a pilot teacher, so we just try it, and if it doesn't work, I say, well, we're just testing this out, and we'll try something else tomorrow, and so it was really cool to then be able to have her say hey, I tried it with my first graders, and then a few older grade teachers go, oh, well, the first graders. So it was really, there is a lot there, but we really did try to be supportive of the teachers, but also encourage them to just try, and just dive in and see what happens, and you might be surprised, and you might, let go of a little bit of control, but that might also be a beautiful thing, because you turn it over to the kids, so it was cool.
So we were able to be given supplemental books. Did you actually?
I brought some just for display.
I think they had those
These are-
online, they were not,
Oh,
they
these
were
aren't
not
the supplemental,
available.
the online. I went
at the
online
time.
and looked at,
Okay.
there's a lot,
Yeah.
There is a lot.
There were other things that you got to see that they did not have access to at the time
got
because
it.
they weren't ready. So,
Okay.
but these would be things
Okay.
that we would be able to get as a part of the adoption.
Knowledge building text right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Which one?
I know the telling stories one
Mhm.
is the book club one.
Yeah, so those are
That's
the
an
book
option,
club
that's
books.
an optional.
And so, actually, they're gonna come with our adoption, if they approve it.
Oh,
That's a new
Oh, like
addition,
it's
so
gonna
I
be
would
like a
say
bonus?
probably.
Should be free, actually.
It's woven into the cost,
How are you
not
negotiating?
woven. I'm still working on that, so I have a big number I'm gonna tell you, and then we're gonna
Yeah.
move to a smaller number.
Yeah.
Negotiating skills.
This is probably a question for you, Amy, but I did notice that there were some things online that said coming soon.
Mhm.
So they are letting you
So this
know
is-
that.
Yes, this is definitely 2025, and I know even as we were meeting with teachers, they were like, somebody said, oh, I can't access this yet.
Okay.
And someone said, oh, well, try today, because I noticed yesterday it came through, so it is
Those are
all
still
coming
coming
and
through.
rolling out,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
are getting the brand new hot off the press. Literally, those books were not
Yeah,
available in
that's
February when
exciting.
we
It
ordered, but
really
they
is
were in March or April when we were able to place that order, so you could see them,
So more resources.
so, definitely.
Did you get to look through all the curriculum, just to kind of peruse it and get a feel for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys collaborate with middle school, because we're gonna have Savas across the board. So,
I don't know that our teachers did so
Yeah,
much,
they're
but I know,
concerned.
we've looked at the program as a whole, and
Yeah.
really there are some differences between K2 and 3-5, and then more differences between 6-8 and 9-12.
Right.
So I'm not overly concerned that because of the variation and kind of the rhythm of just the program itself, that it's going to feel overly repetitive to kids.
That's the only thing I'm afraid of is the redundancy.
Yeah, I
Because-
don't
Right.
see that there.
Even like in these unit themes, like if they're doing geography, like that would sound like I'm doing I don't know, a life science unit, all 5 years. It won't feel like that the way it's, at least for the K-5, now if you're thinking K-12, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
okay, there's some.
Look at everything.
Yeah.
But the way, like, for example, like there was a transportation in like, I think, I might not have this exactly right, but like in 1st grade and 5th grade. But in 1st grade, they were looking at, 5th grade's looking at the history of the railroad for a nonfiction, and it's more like about journey. So there's still like this sub-theme within there, so it's not,
Not
I
the
do not
same.
see repetition at all
Okay.
in the K-5.
Okay.
And
It might actually be helpful for the teachers too, because once you learn how to use all those online tools, you can use those every year, cause I just kind of jumped in there even with, I know that you could pull reports, you know, you can look at the tests, you can input, there's so much information. And it will be accessible, and once you learn that, I guess, that outline, to continue to use that will be maybe, you know, easier when everything, you know, in a year or two, when everything has been,
Even just talking to teachers on week 3 versus week 1, like,
Yeah,
I'm
that
starting
was
to
a
get
big
it.
Starting to
I
get,
feel
yeah.
this, you know, so over the course of a year, I mean,
just to revisit the student piece for a second, we did, when we were working with the secondary team, really look at that between 6, 8, and 9, 12, and did we think it was gonna be overly repetitive? And the answer for Savas was no. Some of the others, yes, that was a concern.
Okay,
And so that was one of the excluding factors, so.
I mean, our
That's
group has
good to
two
know.
different programs,
Mhm.
like elementary is my view, where secondary is my
My
perspective.
Mhm.
I'm so surprised with Savas being so popular in different districts with Act 20, that really, Nursing Council didn't, you know, it's one of the approved.
DPI
Well,
had
that's
it
a
on
whole other
their,
story.
I know, DPI had it on their list of approved, and it is green on ed reports. But it did not make the list of 4, so.
I thought it was quite interesting.
Well, I brought these in, I just wanna talk about it, but I was sitting in the sun finishing up, looking through the reading, and I was quite enjoying myself. Reading all about heroes, this is 3rd grade.
Yeah,
Heroes,
that's-
Franklin Douglas, and then, I mean, like, you know, we talked about balance, I was looking for all of that, and this one in particular, I really enjoyed, it was like unit 4, I think. But Laura Ingalls Wilder, stories about Jane Addams, the Titanic, really balanced, really, really good stuff in here, so yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
I appreciated in regards to the teacher's edition.
Yeah.
The section that we actually already touched upon and talked about was the multilingual, you know, lingual learners, and then I was wondering about the interventions. I wanna make sure that all of our students, you know, are able to be exposed to the same material, because again, we talked about, again, curriculum, thrift, and
Right, and fidelity to this curriculum will be one of the pieces that we are really working on, especially this first year.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure we will find some things, because you do in any curriculum, we would wanna make this tweak or that tweak, and then we do that across
But making sure that those conversations happen between buildings, so
Correct.
like if Valley View is noticing something, like that's part of my job too, like when I'm hearing from this, I'll say, Riverside, what do you say, well, we did, okay, we need to make sure so that we have, you know, no matter what classroom a student is in, they're getting the same experience and the same opportunity, so that's part of like our
ensuring that vertical alignment.
Correct,
You know,
that is one of the things that has been hard with our current curriculum, because there are so many things that I'm saying is the wrong way, it's just not robust enough, so people are pulling things on their
with
own.
great intention.
100%, yes,
Yeah.
you know, nobody's ill intent at all.
Yeah.
But given the, you know, just how much is available, I think you can see that there's, you know, the need to pull those supplementary pieces will be much less in the curriculum. Probably not non-existent, but we'll work through that together as we go.
I know it's cursive writing too, and like the writing piece, and I was excited to see that. It's just, yeah, there's just so much here, so.
Yes, yes,
Right,
and the handwriting piece will be definitely something that we study over this first year. We do have a supplemental handwriting program that I think we're gonna continue handwriting with that tiers. We're gonna continue next year, but I think that's an area that we wanna study and see, do we really need that? Or can we make my view what's in there work for us.
Sure, yeah.
We need some more time to study.
And that was, yeah, like I said, that was one of the questions I had too, is did you feel like you had enough time with the material? But enough time to know it meets the standards and, there was, and this is probably something I can just talk to you about, but there was a couple upside down pages and
Oh,
I think it's just the pilot,
Yes.
you know? I was like, that's interesting.
I should read upside down and it's still-
Yeah.
Upside down.
Make sure you educate
As a
I read
former
upside
first
down
grade
every
teacher,
day.
yes, you know.
I do, I
It's just those
definitely
little
do.
things that like, oh, adjusting it for pilot,
The resources that we received were not in,
final
proof.
proofs,
So,
yeah.
that
Just
does happen,
random.
yeah.
So let's talk dinero.
Yeah, and then does this number include also the training with,
The number I'm going to give you does not at this time. So with this, we're
Okay.
gonna end up billing, or purchasing that kind of separately. So, without going into my second item, so our second item
Okay,
tonight is a
gotcha.
discussion
Okay.
item
All right,
about
gotcha.
where we are on
Okay, I didn't
everything
wanna-
else that we
sorry, I
approved last
jumped
month, but
ahead.
that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay, no, I want you to have a number. I'm about to give you a really big number.
Mhm.
A do not exceed number that we have padded extra because we've learned that shipping and handling
Oh.
costs much more than we had
Okay.
initially intended, and this has a lot of stuff to it, so student workbooks, teacher materials, knowledge building library, book club books, so all of those are heavy.
76 of them.
Correct.
And how many years?
This would be a 6-year license. So, and we are getting, we have there are really 2 charges on the quote. Make sure I say this correctly. There is a per student cost, which includes the digital plus the student book, and then includes the knowledge building library. That's the second charge. That's per student charge also includes those book club books. So those are really the 2 big charges on our current quote. Teacher materials, including the teacher manuals, the reading routine, the intervention manual, all of those are coming at no additional cost.
so just to clarify, that per student charge will be, yearly then for the workbooks, correct?
So it includes 6 years of the workbook. So they will send us the number.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's part of why the number's so big.
Yes, the 6 years of
Okay,
workbook
good
up
to know.
front.
They ship them yearly to us. So drum roll.
And not to exceed number of, again, I padded it a little bit more after we talked, $557,000.
Easy.
And how much is ESSER?
So we had, our additional our funds that we talked about at our last meeting, again, I'm getting ahead a little bit.
I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay, was a total of $688,000.
For ESSER?
No, that was
I'm sorry,
total.
That was total.
That was total.
That was
Okay,
total, did
total.
not exceed. ESSER was less than that.
600, yeah, I don't have it.
I think Esther was like, we had 500,
and some.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that
I think so.
688 included 120 from my budget. So, but currently, preview to the discussion item, we are 47,000 under that 688 right now. So, I'm working on it.
Negotiating skill.
I'm still working on it, so, and I might.
Yeah, get him on the
Yes,
phone.
mhm.
I'm just
So,
saying.
we're gonna-
Come on, you can
I
do it.
anticipated costs will be less than this,
Yeah.
but
This is worst case.
this is worst case.
Okay.
Our kids are working.
They absolutely are.
This is
I
great,
think
I mean, it's
we
gonna be, it's so
excited.
well
This
needed,
is
it's
gonna be-
overdue,
This is gonna be so good.
Money's
Yeah.
inside the budget.
Yeah.
And there's no deficit budget.
Okay.
So if the board chooses to approve
Okay.
the $557,000 as presented, it's not a deficit budget, it's within what we've already planned for. So we're ready to go if you choose to.
Well, it's long overdue.
Yeah.
And our ELA scores and proficiencies reflect it, we need to bring it up. But teachers are motivated, students are motivated, it's just a win-win for all of us. So,
Act 20 alignment,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
on board, yeah.
So what about the motion? Can we use the same
So
one we
I have
did?
it prepared. I can read it for you if you'd like, and then you can tell me if that is what you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, motion to approve the elementary English language arts SAVIS 5U curriculum, I'll insert the grade levels, for 6 years for the amount not to exceed $557,000
To ensure compliance and prevent curriculum drift, the C&L Committee shall conduct continued reviews throughout this contract. The review shall ensure that the approved curriculum maintains alignment with the board's approved and prioritized Wisconsin English Language Arts standards or any changes that may be made to these approved standards. These reviews shall ensure the curriculum maintains balanced content representing multiple viewpoints. The curriculum committee may take action at any time regarding these issues, including but not limited to revising, supplementing, and or removing.
Which I think is what you used last time.
Yes.
This is with the new curriculum.
So the discussion item, I just wanted to clarify, what was the discussion
I'm just
item?
gonna update you on the numbers that we had from
April 17th.
from our April 17th meeting, just to update you on those, which I've kind of already done, so.
And so the supplemental books are,
They're part of that cost.
they're part of the entire cost, oh, okay. Digital and.
The only thing that number doesn't include is the professional development. So, which we had initially intended to include the initial training in this, but Savas has asked us to do that as a separate piece. So, I've got a couple ideas for that.
Say, but if we come in under your number, we have some room for that.
Right, yes, I anticipate I'll be able to get the initial training
Oh,
out
yeah.
of my.
If we're going all Savas, I would-
That's what I'm thinking
yeah.
too, but
I'm feeling the pressure of this, but yes,
Yes,
we're gonna
okay.
be fine, I'm not worried about that right now. So, because some of it will come out of this year's budget and some of it will come out of next year's budget.
Again, don't send Savas the link to this meeting.
Yeah, well, one of the things is, we're investing so much in the materials that we wanna make sure that you are well equipped to
Yeah.
use everything that they have to offer.
Yeah.
And so, that's an important piece.
Absolutely. So that'll be a follow-up conversation. We've already had some initial conversation and then follow-up to kind of firm up our whole plan.
Okay.
So I'll be
Just big picture from a financial perspective, given that Caitlin is out, last time we were discussing the 688,000, the bus contract hadn't been settled yet. And we were projecting anywhere from 10 to 15%. Now, the board is aware that we've already settled the contract, much lower than that, which establishes 3 years worth of plan for expenses. Which it makes us much more comfortable to be well within the budget, well within the buffer of not needing a deficit budget.
Okay, all set? Any other comments or changes or, okay, all right, do I have a
Very well done, thank you, again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
They're just waiting for a vote.
Yeah, I know,
Sorry.
Okay, so do I have a motion? So Sarah
I'll motion.
will motion?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go. It is passed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Good job.
the committee for your support along the way and letting us share our journey with you. So we would like to extend our gratitude towards you too. Thanks.
And for that extra little bit of time, because I think we appreciated that too, that
Oh, sure.
time to look
Yeah.
at that,
Yeah.
it's a big commitment.
Well, it worked out for us, it was a shorter night
Meeting.
tonight, not as long last
Well,
time.
you're welcome.
Great job, everybody. Go and celebrate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your hard work, yes.
So I guess so I guess just to sum this up, because I realized I had one last slide, so.
Okay,
Just the purchase plan, we'll be working closely with the vendor, creating that.
Sorry.
No, just creating our implementation plan, and one of the things, they have a nice network, all those districts that I mentioned, they have a nice Wisconsin network of districts, and so in talking with the rep, she's like, I need to get you connected for our next meeting, and so there's kind of ongoing collaboration formalized by Savas
thank you.
for,
Heather.
thank you, for our team, so I'm excited about that too. So, that's where we're at.
And then you had mentioned some ideas for the training, was it outside of purchasing that piece or?
So a couple of things will happen, there will be some initial onboarding training, and then there will be some summer curriculum work that teachers will engage in to kind of unpack these units. So that initial, and then there'll be some follow-up as well, close to the start of the year, into the school year. So they'll kind of be multi-phases. And then we're just going to be strategic about how we use our professional learning time next year. Make sure there's always a connection back to this, as well as their weekly, regular, early release day collaboration.
Sure.
So
Okay.
there will be this will be a significant focus for our elementary teachers this next year,
I think
as
they're
expected. They are.
I think they're ready for it.
Yeah, the kids definitely commented on reading more and, which again, I've shared that before, but it was just really powerful to hear and kids see that shift.
I think the one thing that caught my attention the most is they're like begging for resources and they're like, now we got them.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's a huge win for our teachers,
It's a huge priority, I mean, this is worth spending the money on,
For sure,
Absolutely,
for sure.
Absolutely.
And I
Within budget.
think it's good timing with Act 20 and having everything that they need, so perfect.
Win-win overall.
So
It is, yeah.
we still need to talk about this item.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to update you on where we are if I can, just because, and I really did talk about it mostly previously, just when we're talking about numbers. We are under, as we're finalizing purchases, are under that $688,000 that we had originally talked about last time by about almost $48,000. But I do wanna be transparent in that as we went through those do not exceed numbers, one came in significantly lower, that was 9 through 12 social studies, because we realized we didn't need to purchase a hardcover book for every kid, because they weren't gonna carry it around anyway, because they've got the digital access. So we'll have class sets in the classroom plus a few extra, we can always purchase more when we need to. I really did shave down like what do we really need at this point, and so that brought that number down by about almost $66,000. But then our ELA numbers exceeded our do not exceed just by a tiny bit, because again, shipping and handling and some other things that were just more expensive. So, but we're well under that number, so.
And I approve Ms. Rabel to move forward as long as it stayed under the do not exceed 688, which we were substantially under.
Yeah, so I
It
just
was
wanted
just
you to know that.
Thank you for being
It was just in
creative with
different,
that.
it was just in different subsets.
And then with
More
that
in
savings,
ELA
you can look
and
at
a
some
lot less
professional
in social
services then.
Yeah, so some of that I'm planning to take out of my budget next year,
Okay.
but some of it, yes, with that 48, it's like 47, something. With that 48, some of that can be PD, some of it will go to this elementary, we will drain the rest of my budget to go to this, obviously, that's what it's there for.
Yeah.
And then, we won't have to do all the PD this summer, there'll be ongoing costs, but that's anticipated. So, and wouldn't necessarily be in our initial purchase.
We have to spend on PD.
Absolutely.
And
Especially
for
with Act
from a
20.
cash flow standpoint, they said they want this all up front.
Yes, these purchases, yes.
All upfront, okay, so can't pay annually.
We're
No.
plenty of cash flow.
Okay.
There's
And
no,
plus it's in our annual budget.
we're sitting 33 to 34% fund balance. So the fund balance is there to hit expenses like this when necessary, then when the state sends money 5-6 times a year, it'll fill that back up, so we're well within our buffer.
There's no layaway plan.
Well, I purchased software in 5-10 year
Yeah, no, it's
agreements.
a good, I
A
understand.
lot of vendors will do annual
Some-
payments, a lot of them will do payments up front. A lot of them will give you discounts if you do payments up front.
True.
Yep,
You know, so I just wanna ask the question.
it's a good question, because sometimes there's leases,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Well, even just
there's-
per student then, breaking those numbers down year by year could look
Right.
Right.
differently, and so.
leasing books is something that certain states have gotten into,
Leasing books.
yeah.
Wow.
It's like more of a collegiate thing,
Yeah.
where you go and buy the book and it's
And
more
you
of a
can
lease
sell it back
and
for,
you're not even
half
really,
price.
some of them don't even buy them anymore.
oh,
You
yeah,
just
true.
sort of, it's more of a, like leasing a car,
Yeah, I
Oh,
actually did it at MSOE.
right?
Yeah, I leased some books and just,
That's-
yeah, here you go, they're done, they're yours again.
That's
Okay.
becoming a
Lot
little
cheaper.
bit,
From Amazon, you can do it from Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
you can lease college books from Amazon.
Cool.
but that's not what we're doing. We're not, we're not
No.
doing
No,
that.
that doesn't make sense.
But
I'm
it is a good
making
question,
Amazon
because
rich.
that is becoming a little bit more in certain states. My sister lives in Arizona and it's pretty common there. She brought it up with my niece who's in the Phoenix area, so it's really interesting seeing how different states
Yeah.
actually go about their spending. I don't wanna say purchasing, to use the incorrect word, but the same sort of thing with like copiers. like we buy our copiers, but a lot of people lease them.
Yep.
It's that
And
I feel like many people lease now instead of buy them.
absolutely,
So,
We do.
anything else on that?
No, I just
Okay.
wanted to keep you updated on that piece and we'll continue to keep you informed, but we're working closely with the business office to get all this wrapped up.
So now we have curriculum calendar.
Yes, so
So now-
we have a lot yet to do this school year. I was hoping that we could schedule at least 2 meetings tonight.
Okay.
One, if possible, yet this month, which would probably mean after Memorial Day, that last week of May, and then one in early June.
In May?
Because I'm worried that we have a lot yet to cover before we lose teachers for the summer.
Oh,
So, and if that early June meeting can't happen before school gets out, that's okay.
So,
Just shortly after school gets out would be preferable.
So we're doing it on a Wednesday or are we doing it on
see, don't we have board meeting on the 28th, right?
So,
We can do
yeah,
I thought, maybe I got
I
that.
can't,
Yes.
I cannot do the 30th, I'm sorry.
Can we do the 29th, that Wednesday?
the
the
29th,
30th is on a
Oh, I'm
Thursday.
sorry, that's a Thursday, I was looking at the wrong date.
the 29th I would not be available until like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, Wednesday, I mean, I'm available Wednesday.
So
The
you are
29th.
not available that Thursday, 30th?
I am not,
Okay,
not at all, I'm sorry, I have an obligation.
That's good,
So
I
you're
told
saying the
everybody I'd
first-
be at the choir concert in high school.
Yeah,
First week in June then, is that what we're looking at?
We could do that.
yeah, I'm more flexible in June. I can do,
Graduation's on.
Graduation's on
June
Friday the
7th.
7th.
I can do June 3rd
Oh,
and 6th. Oh, I can do,
well, okay.
or June 4th.
I can do the 3rd. The 4th I would be available like 6:30.
I can do the 3rd by 6 o'clock.
I could do the 3rd as early as 4.
Six.
6?
Just all depends on, you know.
Can we make the 3rd work, 6 o'clock? Is there there's not a board meeting that night, is there?
No, it's the 1st Monday.
Do we have anything, I mean, we just have one scheduled on the 20th.
We have a planning meeting for student services.
No, that's the
But
11th.
That's earlier, like 11 a.m.
Yeah, okay, yep, 11 a.m., yep.
Yeah,
So you wanna do the 3rd?
3rd at 6
Is that what
p.m.
we're doing?
the 3rd
That
at
works
6.
for me, sure.
Okay.
6 p.m.
So what's on the calendar then for that meeting?
Well, we have a science update, a continuous improvement update,
AP psychology.
AP psychology approval, educator academy approval, those would be the priorities. That personal finance, we can push to a later meeting. And then we had for June, elementary literacy update, Act 20 update, again, we can push those. And then working report cards would probably be a summer meeting, so.
Did you, would it be did you wanna meet twice in June? Is that helpful?
I think
Did
it
we wanna
could
get
be,
something else on
I
the
think
if we
calendar?
get something else on the calendar, it'll just depend then on once I lose I know, once I
just
lose
trying to-
teachers though, it may be harder
How-
to schedule, we'll just have to work through it, so.
Sure,
Well,
But we can,
I
putting
think,
it on the calendar
yeah,
would be
and I
helpful.
still wanna talk about like curriculum policy,
Yes.
I wanna be getting all that cleaned up.
Well, my policy here,
I mean, we could start it in policy, I guess,
wanna
cause
s-
it's 2 of us, and we could ask Sarah to show up and then bring it here, I don't know. Like, however
you
we
wanna
can
talk
do it.
about that then? Then we can do that, we can coordinate, is that what you wanna?
That's fine with me if it's okay with you.
To do what? To
Combine.
Well, we're talking about those
Oh,
curriculum
do
policies, we're
policy
gonna maybe
and
gonna
curriculum.
streamline them better or take a look at them,
And we
since we
can
did.
combine the two like we've done before, we can do joint policy and curriculum.
Sure.
I
That's true, we're all here.
Yeah, that's right. Oh.
Hi, guys.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, who's on policy?
Hello, I'm
Okay. Yes, who's
Yeah.
on policy then?
One,
three of us.
three.
Oh,
That's what I was saying,
Yeah,
so
so
it
let's
would just be
do
like
Yeah.
4 of us.
let's just do
Yeah.
It would be the
Okay.
bonus.
So that
I mean,
might
that'd be nice to
work out.
hammer that out.
I wanna do that.
When did you wanna meet for that then?
June 3rd.
June. No, no, there's too much in
That's
there.
another,
Oh,
that's a lot, it's already a lot to cover,
June
Third. No, no more in that week, no more in that week, please.
Cause we have graduation.
Yeah, we have graduation,
yeah,
lots
the
of
10th is
obligations.
the
And then 5th grade
board
graduation therapy.
meeting.
So
11th
maybe
is student
the,
services, 12th and 11th.
11th is
I won't be
students.
here the week of June 3rd, so I couldn't do it.
June 13th
June
is a Thursday.
13th, I could do.
Okay, I could do that.
I could do that.
Let's do that
Okay.
13th. So
Can you
it'll
do
be
that?
the joint.
And then what time?
I can do earlier.
I can do
I'm flexible that day too.
early, as early as he can handle.
What time can you be
I can
here?
do
I-
it at 4:30, 5?
Shoot for 5?
5?
I
Okay.
cannot make that day work.
Okay, scratch it off.
Well, could we
Okay.
use that for a tentative date for additional curriculum if we needed
Yes.
to? Okay.
I think we
Okay.
should, I'll block that
I'm
out.
not, yeah,
So we're doing a joint meeting.
Yeah.
No,
No,
just
it's
curriculum
not.
on the
just
13th.
Oh,
curriculum.
oh, on the
tentative.
13th, oh
Are
yeah.
you
I
okay
can
with
make,
that?
I
That's a
can
good
make
one.
any other day work.
So what time you wanna do?
It's not that.
So are
we could
you
do
okay
4?
if we
We
schedule?
could do it earlier because he.
Schedule
you know,
curriculum on the 13th, not
Oh,
on
yeah,
the calendar.
absolutely.
Okay.
Right?
So it's just as long as the 3 of us can, I could do it earlier that day,
Yeah,
which I would prefer.
what time
Yeah, how
would you
early?
prefer? Yeah, what are you talking about?
I could do
Name a time.
anytime.
Do 9 in the morning.
No.
I just have a medical procedure that day that I scheduled 6
4.
months ago.
Okay.
So
Oh,
Okay.
you wanted that
to move that kind of
We,
thing.
I can do 4 on the 13th.
You wanna do 4?
Okay,
Okay, so June 3rd at 6 p.m. for C&L, and then June 13th
Tentative.
for tentative on June 3rd?
No, 13th.
so 13th,
It's tentative.
Tentative.
it's for
Let's-
sure.
It's for sure.
It's for,
For
it's
C&L.
happening.
Just for C&L.
Yeah,
It's for talking about additional.
right?
Not policy.
You
Right, not policy.
requesting,
I'm just, we hold that in case I can't get everything in on the
Got
third.
it. Point.
That's,
That's a
that's
good
my
point.
worry is
Okay.
that third is gonna be a
Backup.
jam-packed
Yeah.
meeting, so if we
And
can have
that was-
something else scheduled, then I can,
Offer, okay.
okay, and that was 4
and then if we
o'clock.
don't need it, we can always cancel.
I also, on the calendar too, I wanted to talk about like how you were going to, like for curriculum transparency, putting stuff online, you were talking
Mhm.
about, like maybe we can just have a discussion about it at some point,
Yes, we're in the very
Yeah.
beginning stages of
got it.
that,
Yep.
yep, but we have a plan and it actually has been partially launched, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
The
we'll
work,
be-
the work that has to happen before.
Okay,
Should we talk about our joint then?
Just to
Let's-
keep the board
yeah.
members
Yeah.
here, you know,
Yeah.
we'll be talking, board member Ren, myself, and Mr. Halverson. We'll be talking on the 3rd
Yes,
in order to start planning for the first Student Services Committee meeting, which will be in June.
on the 11th.
Yes, so we're kind of, we have that out there as, you know, we just need some planning. He'll be on Teams and
Okay,
Sarah and I will be like establishing some protocols and agendas and setting the agendas, just as a heads up to this group.
so we'll schedule after we adjourn for the policy then. Does that
Oh, the
sound
joint one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that.
Okay,
And
I
then-
don't, oh, go
Oh,
ahead,
and I was
I'm
just
sorry,
gonna
one more.
say, if it's okay with you then, and I'll reach out to you, but I will work to get everything scheduled as people are available.
Okay,
So it
On
might
that
not be
draft
exactly
agenda.
in this order on here.
okay,
I will-
yep, we'll figure it out.
okay, perfect, thank you.
And I will let you know.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
All right,
Thank you
good to
very
go?
much.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done. Get over here, Bob.
And then we need to schedule